Okay. All right.
Yeah.
We are live. Perhaps our listeners will find us. Unfortunately, it's not showing up through the scheduled live day three liturgy, but
Okay.
we are um, we are live. We're live on YouTube, so
Yay.
we're gonna just trust that that's okay. That's gonna have to be good enough today. And I apologize to those of you who are getting lost in the YouTube world. And it looks like at least a couple people have found us. So if
Oh,
you're with
good.
us and you're listening and you're here, thank you for your patience as we navigate this wild new terrain of the internet. But we're here for our day 3 liturgy, and I'm so grateful to be here with Reverend Judith Lethin and Reverend Sue Turley, two of our collaborators in this creation journey. And I've asked Sue and Judith here specifically for this day 3 liturgy because day 3 is so much about embodiment and bringing our spiritual self into the physical. And Sue and Judith are helping us to do that in our liturgy, in our creation journey through the form of writing and art. So, without further ado, welcome to this liturgy. And I'm going to start by reading our scripture from Genesis. This is Genesis chapter 1, verses 9 through 13. And God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear." And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and trees on the land that bear fruit, with seed in it, according to their various kinds." And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the third day. So, just some remarks from me. We've made it to the third day in our creation journey. And the question I've posed on this day is, what is your ground? What is the ground that you are finding in your life? As a little bit of a review, we began with the emergence of the light, recognizing that there is this light that is in us, that is coming through us. Then this last month, we've been journeying with the waters and the separation of the waters, coming into awareness that there is an inner life and an outer life, an inner life that is whole and good and eternal and true, and an outer life that is sometimes chaotic and challenging and full of limitations, um, because of our physical form and our mortality and all the ways we bump up against each other. And so day 3, when we get to day 3, we've made those first 2 discoveries. We know there is a light in us. We know there is goodness in this life, and we want to give our attention to it. And we also know that we have this inner being that is totally connected to God, totally connected to everything, pure and full and always fine. And we know we have an outer life with children and bills and mortgages and bodies and experiences. And so day 3 is when, in knowing those things, we now choose, okay, how shall I live? What will I do with that information? How might I make space to be here with that knowing, to make room in my life, to be a spiritual being having a human experience? And it's only day 3. We still have many more days ahead of us. So it's not it's not the moment we come into full embodiment and, total alignment and, fully here completely. It's really the first iteration of starting to choose intentionally, starting to choose with this information that of knowing ourselves to be spiritual beings and kind of marking out our territory. How are we gonna do this? And I've been thinking this last week, this is where we choose to participate in liturgies, or this is where we choose spiritual practices, or the intention to get up every morning and go outside and breathe the fresh air, or the intention to move our bodies or eat certain foods, or maybe reframe the stories we say in our minds. This is the day to make choices about how we meet our moments. Not in a perfect, full, forever, forever full fulfillment way, but in a first iteration. And that's it's a powerful moment. And I in thinking about the creation of this new Helen Keller Spiritual Life Collaborative, I think in many ways we're at day 3. We've set a course to create something new, and we've laid a foundation and a set of principles. It's still very fledgling. It's still very new. What it will become is still to be made apparent. And in the principles of the collaborative, I really see day 3 as the end. This trinity that I'm always talking about: be love, be honest, be useful. We started with love. The light is the love that's always here. Be honest is so much about navigating these internal and external waters. What's true in that mix, and not, what's true about what's inside that wants to come out, and what's true about my external world that I have to really take seriously and navigate. And then day 3 is, how can we be useful? What's useful right now? What's needed? And there's many different ways to answer that question. So those are my reflections, and I would love to turn it over to my 2 fellow leaders this night to hear what words you might want to share about finding your ground of what's useful at this moment for you as a spiritual being having a human experience. And Judith, maybe you'd like to begin.
Oh, thank you, Sage. I just have been loving this question. And the very words ground, the ground of our being, or becoming grounded. I mean, that's such a buzzword. Even on Facebook, people are selling you grounded shoes or grounding shoes. So this whole idea of becoming ground, or what is your ground, or how do you find your ground, is just powerful. And I think it's really important to wrestle with it. But as I was listening to you speak, I was reflecting back literally 50 years ago, when I was young. I was just turning 31. I was practicing yoga. I was trying to stay away from sugar. I was reading the Bible for an hour every day. I was meditating. I was doing all these things during Lent, and Lent starts this next week for us in the Episcopal tradition. And so I wanted to be perfection. I wanted to have that connection to God and to feel totally whole. And every day I failed at something. I either ate the pie, I didn't read the Bible, or I didn't go jogging or something. And one morning I was standing in my kitchen and I said the most casual prayer I've ever offered in my life: why have I failed to live up to my Lenten commitment? That's all I said. I didn't even say it out loud. I just said it in my head. I was kind of just saying, wow, what's happened? I made this big commitment to become really holy, and I've failed every day. And I literally heard a voice in my head say, because you're doing all those things for yourself. Now, if you want to do something for me, you can teach or write or sing or use any of the gifts I have given you. I was astounded because those were my three favorite things to do in the whole world: sing, teach, write. So that was kind of the beginning of my turning around and stopping this crazy ascetic journey of finding God or getting closer and closer and closer to God. I thought I had to go find God. Years later, I'm still teaching, writing, and singing, but I was invited to begin to meditate on Psalm 23. And as I did that, I literally began that practice for an entire year. Every morning, I would read a line to myself, and then I would think about it and read another line and think about it and read another line and think about it. By the end of that year, I realized God had already found me. And everything I needed was in that psalm. The invitation to rest, the invitation to follow, the invitation to trust, the invitation to make peace and sit down and have a meal with my enemies or whomever I considered to be different than myself, and the recognition that I dwelled in God's house forever. So as I was getting ready for this podcast with you and Sue, I thought, well, of course, that psalm for me has been like a grounding or a lightning rod or something. It has been a place where I found that sense that my grounding is in the holy, is in God. Not that I've done something to find it, but I stripped away all the things that were keeping me from seeing that I was found of God. God had already found me.
Beautiful.
And somehow in that was the realization that God was also finding everyone else. I mean, I am not unique, and I'm not special, and I'm not magic. I'm nothing. I'm just a mother and a grandmother and a great grandmother. And so I feel now that the whole earth, I mean, the trees and the birds, and we were just talking about the deer in Sue's yard and all those things. Practicing remembering that is, for me, the ground of my being right now. Just remembering that I belong, but you belong. Everyone out there listening already belongs. So thank you for inviting me to wrestle with this question.
You're so welcome, and thank you for your offering, and thank you for your story, because it's so descriptive of this moment of, you already had it in you. You already had all the things that God had already planted in your heart to connect. You just needed that little, and something about our 30s. It's easy to ignore ourselves when we're that young. I'm so glad you got that message early on. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Sue, what might you like to offer to the circle tonight?
Yeah, well, thank you both, Judith and Sage, for your share. I really enjoyed listening to you both a lot, and I'm just trying to download it and integrate it. And I feel like I need to go off now and do some writing or art or just journaling, because you've both said so much that was so rich. So I'm going to try to shift gears here. I think what struck me about the reading was God's intention of separating the ground from the water and allowing the ground to grow and prosper and produce while the water was over there doing its water thing. And that struck me as really important about what is it that internally we need to put aside, or externally we need to put aside, so that we can be more productive or spiritual or better versions of ourselves. And it just, I don't know, it struck me as interesting. So I was thinking about, how do I connect with God? What is my ground? Because I think of ground as the foundation Swedenborg talks about remains, and what we are taught as kids that becomes the ground from which we grow and we walk on in our principles and our values and how we make decisions and all these things that they're fundamental to how we are in our lives. And I was thinking, what do I do now as an adult in my golden years, so to speak, to keep grounded in those truths while I go about doing my business? And that's where I come back to art. For me, the most powerful relationship I have at this time in my life with God is through my art. And when I wake up in the morning, I'm always so excited to go to my studio. I just want to, that's all I want to do. I'm sort of obsessed about it right now. And because it's such a spiritual practice, it's all about my dialogue with God. When I'm picking out colors and I'm seeing the magic of what happens when you put color with brush on a canvas, it's just magical to me. And I just think this is my prayer. This is my meditation. This is my grounding. Everything becomes so much better when I'm expressing what's inside of myself on the outside. And I learn all sorts of things. I learn humility because a lot of my paintings are just awful. and then I learn joy because every once in a while I make the happy mistakes, as artists call it. And then I learn about myself, and how God is working within me. So I feel correspondences are really alive when people engage in creative activity, whether it's a conversation with a friend or preparing or going to worship or going to work. If we can wake up that morning, and which I rarely do, but I am going to try to be more intentional about it and say, how do I want to be with God today? Whereas, how do I want to be grounded in that today? I think it would really, and then let that float in your head and somehow be reminded of that question. At least for me, it'll really help me approach the canvas differently. How do I say hello to God? How do I hear God? What is God wanting me to express today? What do I want healed? What do I want out there? And my hope is that in terms of the Trinity, the three focuses that you to be love, to be honest, I think is the second one, and useful. The usefulness for me is the fact that if someone can look at one of my paintings and see something about themselves in it that they benefit from seeing, because they see it, not because I paint something, I hope you see this, but somehow if I'm painting something spiritual from my experience, that I'm assuming somebody else can relate to that. And it brings me so much joy when somebody feels moved by one of my paintings, because they're really being moved inside of themselves about something about them and their world. An example of that is when I had a booth in Yellow Springs, Ohio, with a friend. I had one of my paintings up there. It was one. I almost didn't bring it because I didn't want to give it up. And but I thought, well, somebody might like it. Anyway. One young woman. She was just really a sweet gal. She was just had her gothic look. I really liked her a lot just from being near her. And she was just standing there mesmerized by this painting that I almost didn't bring. And she had tears in her eyes and said, I just love this. It's just calling to me, but I can't afford it. And, in that instant, I had to have her have it.
Yeah.
She needed to take it home. And so I said, well, what can you, what would you pay for it? What's it worth to you? What can you offer for it? And she goes, oh no, I can't, I can't devalue the worth of it. And there's no devaluing this. And I told her what I just told you guys about not bringing it. I said, if this goes home with somebody who's moved by it like you are, then you will be giving me a gift. You will make my heart sing. So you just decide what you want to contribute to it, and I will buy a new paintbrush and we'll. So I had to really convince her to take, but that's what I mean. I think that's the full circle. If I do my part, keep myself spiritually grounded, which is a huge, huge, major uphill battle, then my paintings are different. And usually I find that somebody will find something about themselves of value by looking at the painting. And if it makes them feel empowered or healed or smile or cry, then I know that God's been working through me, and I've been able to bring that internal stuff out for other people.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sue.
Wow.
Yes, and you've so well articulated, I think, the vision of where we're headed is when we all can do that, when we can honor ourselves and honor the life, the light in us, and bring that into the world. God creates this beautiful tapestry of collaboration and harmony and usefulness that flows just like ecosystems with their balance of activity. So
Yeah.
that's the aim. And I think of day 3 as like, that's like when it's happening, but it's like, it's messy because we're just starting to find our ground, and I think this month, as we reflect together, and for our listeners and others who are coming to join the liturgy, I hope you'll join some of our workshops, either with Sue or with Judith, or what the workshop I'll be offering. And you can find all that information at the website. Actually, I'll put the link up. This is the time to kind of be willing to take your ground, even if it feels messy, like even if it doesn't feel like if you're going to be good at it. I liked you shared you sometimes make bad paintings. We have to be willing to be in the mess as we step into our authenticity and our truth. And even that mess might be useful to someone, which is wonderful to remember, because having that bravery to step in. And then you also mentioned, Sue, I think another theme that we'll be reflecting on throughout the month, which is, Swedenborg speaks about day 3 in relationship to repentance, that there's something about finding our ground that is also connected to figuring out what is not our ground and what we maybe had thought was supposed to be our ground. And that's part of the messiness. So if, as you find your ground, you realize, oh, this is like this week I have way too many commitments, and realize I had to shift gears, or the way our YouTube, didn't go live in the place we wanted it to. There are going to be missteps. There are going to be problems, and that's just part of the design, and it's part of the letting go and the making room. So lots of good things, I think, to reflect on this month.
Yes.
As we find our ground together. So we did it, and hopefully people will find us. So if you've joined live, thank you so much for finding us on the interweb, and hopefully you can find this after the fact as well. And I hope you will join us in this work, and then also in the formation of this Helen Keller Spiritual Life Collaborative, because it is a new initiative that is still very much finding its ground, and it will find its ground as we come together to create what we want it to be. Exactly. Well, many blessings to you all. Blessings, Sue. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Judith.
Thank you for inviting us.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. And we will see you all again in other spaces of the interwebs as the weeks go on. Our first workshop, just so everyone knows, is tomorrow night. Monday night, Sarah Walker will be offering her workshop on creation and awakening.
Yes, good.
Right. Good night, everyone.